Welcome to In Light of the Gospel. This is 2025. Greetings to everybody. I appreciate you all tuning in. My family and I are just about to head down to Mexico. I'm going to be speaking there on marriage and family, marriage and the gospel and family. And those three things are so intertwined that they can't really be separated. And I love to try to mesh those things together. But I've got a quick word for you just from the book of Colossians, chapter 1. He tells us this in chapter 1, that ye might walk worthy of the Lord. And if you know my emphasis, you know what I like to teach. I talk a lot about not being worthy of the gospel. We are not worthy of what Christ has done. God did not look down at us and see something worthy that he could die for. He saw enemies. He saw wicked people. He saw sinners that he gave his life for, so that he could make us worthy. And now here it says that ye might walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work. And I think it's important that we look at this passage a little bit more closely. I won't get into all of it because there's so much that could be dug into. But when you read how Paul comes to this thought of walking worthy, it starts with this. Paul had sent Epaphras to go to the Colossae to understand how they were doing as a church. And then he receives word back from Epaphras that they are doing great, that they're walking in love, that they're loving one another, loving God, sharing the gospel. Things are going very well. And the Apostle Paul says, as soon as we heard of it, as soon as the Epaphras declared unto us your love in the Spirit, he says, for this cause also, since the day we heard of it, do not cease to pray for you and to desire that ye might be filled with the knowledge of his will in all wisdom and spiritual understanding. So often just the reverse of us. We often, when we hear someone is struggling, then we begin to pray for them. When people are struggling, we ought to pray for them. But the apostle, when he heard of their love, when he heard of their walk being faithful, he said, I prayed for you. I don't cease to pray for you. Why? That you might be filled with the knowledge of his will, that you would walk in humility, that you would walk in holiness, that your mind would be filled with the wisdom of God, all spiritual understanding, that you'd be able to discern between right and wrong. And then he says, that ye might walk worthy of the Lord. So we are never going to be worthy of what God has done for us. We're not saved because of our worthiness. But now that we're saved and made worthy, a few verses down here, he's actually going to say that we have been made meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light. That means we have been made right. We've been made suitable to be inheritors of God's righteousness, of his inheritance that he wants to give. You and I often don't seem worthy. We struggle, we fall, we sin, and then we think, how could I be one of the worthy ones? Well, the good news is you're not worthy, but the good news is also you can walk worthy. It's an admonition. He wants us to walk worthy of the calling wherewith we are called. Walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing. This is the beautiful thing, is God has so sanctified our life. He has so cleansed us from unrighteousness that you and I can now do things that God looks down at and says, that is very pleasing to me. I love what he is doing. I love what she is doing. And this is where we should be at. We should be in a place in our frame of mind where we recognize, I have been made righteous with God. I have been made meet to be inheritor with the saints. All the saints of God will inherit God's promises and inherit God's eternal rewards because of what Christ has done. We have all been made suitable, meet to be inheritors of that. And now he says, walk worthy of the Lord. Another place he says, walk worthy of the calling wherewith you are called. So we've been called saints. We've been called holy. We've been called righteous. And now he says, walk worthy of the Lord unto all pleasing, being fruitful in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. So when you sin, you set that aside. You recognize, I've been forgiven for this sin also. And you turn to God again and say, Lord, I need to know more of your grace. I need to increase in knowledge and increase in your grace and in your mercy towards me. We never come to a place again of thinking, I'm just not worthy to come to God. Of course we're not worthy to come to God. We come to God based on the work of Jesus, and then we seek to walk worthy of that calling, to walk worthy of the Lord. And yes, we can please God with the works that we do. So often our works are kind of mixed with good intention and bad. God looks down on it and He's pleased with where we're at. He's happy with the things that we're doing in His name. So this to me is a great encouragement. He says we ought to be walking worthy of the Lord in every good work, fruitful, and increasing in the knowledge of God. Keep learning about God and Christ and what He's done. Strengthened with all might according to His glorious power, unto all patience and long suffering with joyfulness. So the goal is the people in Colossae, they're doing great now. They're walking in love. And he says, I know there's long suffering coming. I know that there's trials coming. I know that difficulties will arise. Maybe some of you are already currently going through those things. He says, if you walk worthy of the Lord, if you increase in the knowledge of God, if you understand the grace of God toward you, if you're full of good works that are fruitful and you're walking worthy of it, you're strengthened with might according to His glorious power, then you will have the patience, the perseverance to continue suffering long with joyfulness. Now, I know this is a whole mishmash of different ideas and thoughts, but that's how the apostle writes it. He just jams all these ideas and these thoughts into these few verses, and then he says, this is how I want you to be. This is what he's praying for the Colossians to have and to experience. Giving thanks unto the Father, verse 12, which hath made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light. All of this understanding, knowing your place, your status before God, your position before Him, your ability now to walk worthy and to walk holy and to understand the grace of God that keeps cleansing us and it keeps us pure in God's sight. All of that should make us give thanks even in the midst of trial, even in the midst of difficulties, that we would continue to give thanks unto the Father because we have been made meet, suitable, to be inheritors with Jesus, with the rest of the saints. You and I are called saints. My name is Saint Daniel. You know, I am a holy, godly man because of what God calls me. Now, I want to rise to the occasion and walk worthy of that. Lastly, I would just covet your prayers. I'd ask that you pray for our family as we travel and pray for my words as I speak. Pray for the people that are hearing, that marriages would be transformed, that people would come to Christ, that families would be rejuvenated and refreshed in their motivation to live godly and to reach the next generation and so on and so forth. So thank you again for coming onto this channel and for participating in all these things. And especially thank you if you're praying for us, praying for me in particular in this case. And just thank you again very much for being part of what this channel represents and stands for. Go bring the gospel into the whole world. Live in light of what God has done for you. Never go back to trying to appease God or trying to make things right with God. Recognize that God has made things right with you. God has made peace with you, and we live out of, in light of the gospel. Thank you very much. God bless.